What is going on, everybody? Tyler Brandt back here with another video, and in today's video we are going to address the offensive line situation now that Marcus Cannon has decided to opt out of 2020. There is going to be, and there is a hole now on the offensive line before we even get into the regular season, and I think it's going to be kind of intriguing. New England has a few different ways, especially now regarding how much cap space they have, to fill the right tackle spot in New England. So I figured in today's video we'd address a couple ways that we would consider New England to fill that hole on the offensive line. So I think the best place to start with potential replacements in terms of Marcus Cannon would probably be the next man up on the depth chart, and that role goes to Cunningham. Again, he, at least on paper, is the guy that is right behind Marcus Cannon to play tackle. He was drafted in 2018 by Arizona and acquired by New England in 2019, and he really played a very minimal role in New England in 2019. Again, it was really Marshall Newhouse that was the big benefit of all the injuries on the offensive line. But again, he was acquired by New England from Arizona in 2019. And the only real stretch of games that we have to talk about Cunningham was in 2018 in 6 games that he played for Arizona. And I don't like to be very harsh unless I have to be, but he was honestly very, very bad. He was really not very good. In 6 games played, he allowed 2 sacks, he allowed 2 quarterback hits, he had 14 hurries, 18 pressures, and 4 penalties in 6 games with the Arizona Cardinals. All of that equates to a 57.7 Pro Football Focus rating and a 60.4 overall grade. So it was a lot of ugly for Cunningham when he had an opportunity earlier with the Arizona Cardinals. However, I will say maybe something that he has going for him, or something that makes me feel a little bit better about him coming into the season, if he's going to be the guy at right tackle, would be the fact that New England went out of their way to acquire him. So maybe they saw something in him, and maybe throughout the last offseason and this camp and last year's regular season, they've kind of put some things and helped him, and maybe helped him advance to be a little bit of a better tackle. Who knows? But what we've seen on tape and on the field has not been very good with Cunningham. All right, next up on the list to replace Marcus Cannon, probably the most intriguing name on this list, and that is going to be Yodny Cajuste. Now, if you haven't heard of him, he's been on New England for a year now, but he hasn't played a snap, at least in the NFL at all, at least in the regular season. And he, at least from what we know in college, was very good when he was healthy. However, he is very injury prone. He didn't play in 2019. He was on a non-football injury list. He tore his ACL in college in 2016. He had a knee injury in 2015. However, when he did play at the college level at West Virginia, he was back-to-back all Big 12 and was an All-American in 2018. And I believe his senior year, he was a co-offensive lineman of the year in the Big 12. So he, at least when he was healthy, was very, very good, and he has a super high ceiling from what we've seen of him in his football career. However, will he be healthy enough to work through camp and get into the regular season and really get some snaps under his belt? That remains to be seen, but Yodny Cajuste is a guy that has a super, super high ceiling. New England saw that. New England drafted him, and maybe now that he's healthy, he can really start seeing some snaps, and we can really see what his body of work in the NFL will look like. Next up on the list, we go from an intriguing option to an option that I've seen that I think is just not a good idea, and that is to replace Marcus Cannon by moving Joe Thuney from left guard over to right tackle. Now, if this is your first time on the channel or your first time watching a video, you know I am the captain and the flag bearer of the Pay Joe Thuney bandwagon. Pay the guy. I personally want him to retire a New England Patriot. He said multiple times that he loves playing in New England. Pay Joe Thuney, pay Joe Thuney, pay Joe Thuney. However, with that being said, I wouldn't really love him at right tackle. Because I think that if he goes over to right tackle and he plays right tackle exceptionally, which wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he's got a great work ethic. He's a great offensive lineman. It wouldn't surprise me at all. All of a sudden, his value goes way up. So at the end of this year, when this year's up and they have to pay him, now they're going to be in a bidding war with a bunch of teams that know he can play inside at guard excellently, and he can bump outside, and he can play tackle excellently. So all of a sudden, his value goes way, way up if you're going to trade him and he's good at right tackle, the trade value goes up, which I guess is good, but I would just prefer him be a top 3 guard in the NFL and be a Patriot for life. That's fine for me. But beyond that, although Coach Dante Scarnecchia has retired, kind of his mantra, and from what everyone said, it is not to, fix a problem by creating another problem. So all of a sudden you move him to tackle, and you don't know who the next man up at guard is, and if he can play it at the level, and probably can't play it at the level that Joe Thuney played it. And with all the guys and with all the ways that New England can run the ball this season, I just think it would be better to have elite guard play so New England can find creative ways to run the ball, especially over guard or over center. To me, I don't understand why we would make, or why New England would make another hole by creating one, especially with the cap space and the guys on the depth chart that can pop in and fill that position admirably. You would think, at least. And even beyond that, too, to another level with the Joe Thuney move to right tackle is, although he's not a primarily, pass blocking, the ultimate last resort for the QB's blind side, why would you make that left side of the line weaker when, again, that's your quarterback's blind side? So if that part of the offensive line could stay intact, with 2 mobile quarterbacks, whatever one it's going to be, whether it's Stidham or Cam Newton, both of them are agile. While Cam Newton is different than Stidham, of course, they can both move around and they can both extend plays with their legs. So even if the right tackle position is a little bit weaker, they see it coming, and feeling and seeing pressure right in front of your face is a lot different than feeling blindside pressure. So why would you make that blind side of the offensive line weaker by moving one guy over to right tackle? It just doesn't make sense to me. Long story short, the Thuney idea to me is a bad idea, and finally, pay Joe Thuney. And finally, the last way that New England could upgrade the offensive line, or at least the right tackle position, again, in the absence of Marcus Cannon, is to upgrade, of course, through free agency. There's a few intriguing options. I know if New England wants to go with people with familiarity with the system, guys like Adrian Waddle, who's been in New England, and, of course, Marshall Newhouse, although I want nothing to do with Marshall Newhouse. They're both out there. We know Adrian Waddle has spent 17 and 18 with New England. He had 300-plus snaps in New England. None of them were very good. He's a sub-60 Pro Football Focus guy, so he's not really going to wow you. We all saw Marshall Newhouse, and what he was last year was a train wreck. If they want to go with guys that aren't quite familiar and have obviously never been with New England, we've already talked, I know in the comments of another video, I thought DeMar Dotson would have been nice. 34, age was a little bit of a factor, but he's had 5 seasons with 900-plus snap counts. None of those seasons had a Pro Football Focus grade below 67. So he's been a very good to great lineman for a lot of years. Again, at the right tackle side, you don't have to be perfect. I mean, it would be nice if you were elite, obviously, but you don't have to be perfect, especially with 2 quarterbacks that can extend the play and that are mobile in the pocket. Of course, also, Donald Penn is someone else that I've also mentioned in the comments before. He's down there. He's 37, so again, age is pretty concerning, but on a 1-year deal, I think if you can come in and be good, the age doesn't really matter. But he's spent several years in Oakland as an elite offensive lineman. Although in the last season with Washington, he also gave up a career high in QB pressures, and he had just an abysmal 11 personal fouls against him and 11 penalties against him, which is just awful. I mean, there's no other way around it. And then the last option, at least scrolling through some of the free agent options that are out there as offensive linemen, the last one is Cordy Glenn. Now, he, by NFL standards, he's in his early 30s, so he's not quite, completely out of the league or completely done with his NFL career yet. 30's not too bad. 31's not really too bad for the NFL. He's been injured. He was a cornerstone piece in Buffalo. He went to Cincinnati, got injured, got banged up a little bit, had some disagreements with front office, and it's kind of given him a little bit of a not great rep. So I understand why he's a free agent. But I do think if you can get him in here, that's someone maybe you could sign to like a 1-and-1 with a team option or something like that, where if he comes in and if he plays effective offensive line. You can get him in on a cheap, relatively friendly deal, and maybe you get a couple good years out of a guy like that, even as a rotational backup when guys get injured. I think that's an interesting way to explore one of the more talented sides of free agency, at least on the offensive line. So that is just some of the ways that New England could go about replacing Marcus Cannon on the offensive line in 2020. We never know with camp. It looks like starting August 17th, padded practices, maybe a guy on the depth chart really rises through the ranks and, makes a name for himself and becomes a staple on that offensive line. We will certainly see. It'll be interesting, but again, these are just some of the ways. If you think you have something creative, leave it down in the comments down below. If you think Joe Thuney should move over there, leave it down in the comments below. Anything you want, leave it in the comments below. I'd be happy to chop it up with any Patriot fans or any football fans talking about anything. Once again, I'm Tyler Brandt. Remember to follow me on Twitter at the Tyler Brandt, on Instagram at Talking Pats. Be happy again to just chop it up with you guys. But until next time, be safe, be good, and I'll catch you on the next video.